Welcome to Japanese Sleep Whispers, your sanctuary for peaceful nights and gentle dreams. Tonight's story is accompanied by the soothing melody Kaiman, a piece created to bring calmness and deep relaxation. Here, you will find calming bedtime stories inspired by the timeless beauty and traditions of Japan. Whether you seek peace after a long day, relief from stress, or help drifting into sleep, these stories will guide you toward tranquility. Imagine moonlit gardens, ancient temples, and whispering bamboo forests as the music of Kaiman carries you deeper into stillness. If you'd like these soothing moments to be part of your nightly ritual, consider subscribing so they're always here when you need them. Thank you for listening. May Kaiman and these gentle whispers bring you peace, tonight and always. The Lantern's Gentle Watch. Prologue. The first light of evening. The train slid quietly along its rails, a soft hum rising and fading like the tide. Outside the wide window, the city lights had already begun to dim, giving way to a darker horizon where the countryside waited. The traveler leaned against the seat, feeling the gentle sway of the carriage. It was not a hurried journey, nor one with a strict destination. It was simply a passage away from the noise of the city, toward a quieter place where lanterns might still glow at night. Where rivers might still speak in whispers, and where silence itself could be heard. The overhead lights inside the train flickered with a mild warmth. A small notebook rested on the traveler's lap, though no words had been written yet. Instead, the notebook served as a reminder that the journey was meant to be slow, meant to leave space for stillness. As the train passed through stretches of rice fields, the last traces of the sunset lingered. The sky turned from gold to rose, from rose to violet, and then to a deepening blue. A single star appeared above the fading line of mountains. Somewhere in the distance, the traveler imagined, a lantern was being lit, its glow a quiet witness to the night ahead. The traveler closed their eyes for a moment, listening to the rhythm of the wheels. The thought arose, soft as a sigh, tonight will be a beginning. Chapter 1. The Lantern by the Riverside. The station was small, almost hidden. When the traveler stepped off the train, there was no crowd, only the sound of crickets rising from the dark edges of the fields. The platform was lit by a single lamp, its glow neither bright nor weak, but steady. A cool breeze moved gently across the skin, carrying with it the scent of water and earth. Following a narrow path away from the station, the traveler soon came to a river. It was not wide, not fierce. Its surface mirrored the half-lit sky and the silhouettes of quiet houses. By the river's edge stood a stone lantern, weathered by years, softened by moss. Its light was faint, but steady, and it seemed to breathe in rhythm with the flowing water. The traveler paused, gazing at the lantern. There was nothing urgent to do, no place to rush. The sound of the river was enough, and the lantern seemed to watch kindly, as if assuring that the night would be safe. A bench stood nearby, and the traveler sat, letting the stillness unfold. The houses across the river were quiet, their windows glowing with muted yellow light. Somewhere, a door slid open, and laughter drifted out softly before fading back inside. A dog barked once, then all returned to calm. The lantern's glow reflected on the traveler's eyes, steady and tender. It was not the light of cities, nor the sharp brightness of screens. It was a light that seemed to belong to the earth, a light that had always been there. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours, or perhaps seconds. The river continued its song, gentle and constant. The traveler opened the notebook and finally wrote a single line. The lantern by the riverside waits, not for anyone, but simply for the night to come. The pen was set down. The notebook closed. And the journey, quiet and unhurried, had truly begun. Chapter 2: The Wooden Bridge at Dawn. The traveler awoke to a gentle hush that lay over the small town. Morning had not yet stretched its full light across the streets, and the air carried a cool trace of mist. Windows were closed, shutters drawn, but faint scents of breakfast rice steaming, miso warming drifted quietly into the dawn. Stepping outside, the traveler followed a narrow road that curved between houses and opened toward the river once more. The lantern by the riverside, seen the night before, had gone dim, its flame now at rest. In its place, the pale glow of early light reflected across the water. There was a wooden bridge that arched gently over the river. Its planks were worn but sturdy, polished smooth by years of footsteps and the touch of rain. Standing upon it, the traveler could see the faint ripples below, fish moving slowly in the shallows, and the reflection of the sky, a sky just beginning to soften from gray into gold. Birds stirred in the branches along the river bank, their calls scattered and light. One by one, curtains across the town were pulled aside, revealing silhouettes inside. A bicycle bell rang softly in the distance. The bridge became a threshold between night and day, between stillness and the quiet pulse of life. The traveler lingered there, notebook in hand, writing only a few words. The bridge carries not only footsteps, but the passing of hours, the weight of time made light. As the first rays of the sun stretched over the rooftops, The mist lifted gently, and the traveler moved onward, leaving the bridge behind but carrying its stillness within. Chapter 3: The Garden of Falling Leaves. Later that afternoon, the traveler reached the edge of town, where a small garden opened beside a narrow lane. A wooden gate marked the entrance, its frame simple yet dignified. The traveler stepped inside, finding a place where time seemed slowed to the pace of drifting leaves. It was early autumn. The garden was dressed in layers of quiet. Color maple leaves turning crimson, ginkgo leaves glowing yellow, and pine trees offering their deep, unchanging green. The air was cool and dry, scented faintly with earth and tea leaves from somewhere nearby. A path of stepping stones wound through the space, guiding the traveler past a pond where koi swam lazily beneath the mirrored sky. The water caught each falling leaf and carried it in slow spirals, as though the garden itself were cradling the season. The traveler found a bench beneath a maple tree, its branches stretched like an open hand. Sitting there, the sound of the world narrowed: the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a crow, the quiet splash of a fish breaking the pond's surface. The notebook opened again. Words appeared slowly, as though written not with ink, but with the rhythm of breath. Leaves fall not as endings, but as reminders that even in letting go, beauty lingers. As the traveler closed the notebook, a breeze moved through the garden, lifting a small flurry of leaves into the air. They danced gently before settling once more, painting the stones with quiet color. The traveler smiled faintly, knowing that the journey ahead would not be hurried. Each step, each sight, would wait patiently, like the lantern, like the bridge, like the garden itself, guardians of a slower time. Chapter 4: A Train Through the Rain. The afternoon sky had grown heavy with clouds, and a soft rain began to fall as the traveler returned to the station. Drops tapped gently on the platform roof, a quiet percussion that seemed to echo the rhythm of the traveler's own heartbeat. Umbrella in hand, the traveler boarded a small regional train, the wood-paneled interior smelling faintly of polished floors and damp coats. The train moved slowly through the countryside, past fields that glistened with raindrops, past forests whose leaves trembled beneath the soft drizzle. Every curve of the tracks offered a new view: a cluster of houses with smoke curling from chimneys, a lone dog sheltering under a porch, the occasional torii gate standing silently in the mist. Inside the carriage, few passengers spoke. The low hum of conversation was drowned by the whisper of rain on the windows. The traveler pressed a palm against the cool glass, watching the landscape blur into streaks of green and gray. The sound was comforting, the soft rhythm of movement, the gentle tapping of rain, the train carrying all forward without hurry or insistence. The traveler opened the notebook, writing with slow, deliberate strokes. Rain softens the edges of the world. Every drop a small lullaby, every motion a gentle guide through quiet hours. For a long while, the traveler watched the rain slide down the window, imagining that each drop carried a tiny story of its own. Outside, the world seemed to be paused, yet it was endlessly moving. Within, the traveler felt a sense of quiet companionship with the unseen lives passing by in muted color. Chapter 5: The Old Tea House. The train's whistle announced the traveler's arrival at a small town nestled between rolling hills. Rain had lessened to a drizzle, and a lantern glowed faintly outside a narrow wooden building. Its sliding door bore a simple sign, Old Tea House. Inside, the space was warm and dimly lit. Paper lanterns cast soft pools of light across low tables and tatami mats. The air carried the soothing scent of green tea and roasted barley. Behind the counter, an elderly woman arranged delicate cups with a careful, practiced rhythm. She looked up, smiled faintly, and nodded, as if greeting not only the traveler, but the evening itself. The traveler sat near a window, watching droplets trace lazy paths down the glass. A kettle hissed gently, steam curling like thin clouds toward the low ceiling. Tea was served without hurry, and the traveler sipped slowly, letting the warmth spread through the body, settling the mind. A few locals spoke quietly to one another, voices low, wrapped in politeness and familiarity. A cat slept in the corner, its tail curling gently as if keeping time with the soft drip of rain. Every detail seemed to move with a purpose of stillness, an unspoken insistence that nothing need be rushed. The traveler's notebook opened once more. In a tea house, even the smallest gestures are careful guardians of peace. The world outside may rush, but here, time bends to listen. Minutes passed like quiet waves, the rain outside softening into a whisper. The traveler stayed, savoring the calm, knowing that such moments were not fleeting, but eternal in memory, lantern lit in the mind. Chapter 6: The Temple Bell at Twilight. As the day began to yield to evening, the traveler arrived at a small temple perched on the edge of a quiet hill. The sky was painted with shades of soft orange and deep purple, the colors mirrored in the still water of the temple's koi pond. The path leading up to the temple was lined with stone lanterns, each one unlit yet waiting patiently for the night. The air was cool, carrying the subtle scent of pine and wet earth. The temple bell stood tall and solemn, its wooden frame polished smooth by time and hands long gone. A monk passed silently, nodding briefly at the traveler before continuing his slow ritual of sweeping the temple grounds. When the bell tolled, the sound spread like a gentle wave across the hillside, deep and resonant. It was a sound that seemed to stretch time, to pause the movement of the world for a single, infinite moment. The traveler closed their eyes and let the vibration settle in the chest, letting every small worry dissolve with the echo. The notebook opened once more. The bell does not rush. Its voice is a reminder that some moments are meant only to be heard, not to be acted upon. Twilight deepened, and the first stars appeared above the temple roof. The lanterns along the path remained dark, yet in the mind's eye, each glowed softly, as if honoring the bell's gentle toll. The traveler lingered, aware of the peace that arrived when the world simply allowed itself to be still. Chapter 7: The Snow-Covered Path. Winter had come quietly to the next town. The traveler awoke to find rooftops and narrow streets dusted in fresh snow. Each step on the white path made a soft crunch, a delicate punctuation in the silent morning. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin, curling lines, and the air carried a faint, woodsy warmth. The path led through a forest of bare trees, their branches etched sharply against the pale sky. Snow clung to every twig, every stone, turning ordinary shapes into quiet sculptures of winter. The traveler's breath formed soft clouds, merging with the hush of the snow-covered world. A small stream ran alongside the path, partially frozen, its water murmuring beneath a glassy surface. Birds occasionally flitted across the branches, their tiny tracks leaving delicate marks in the snow. Each detail, each sound, seemed to arrive slowly, deliberately, allowing the traveler to notice the world in a way that daily life often forgot. The notebook opened again. Snow teaches patience. Each flake falls alone, yet together they form a blanket of calm. So too can moments of silence gather into peace. By noon, the traveler reached a clearing where the sunlight reflected off the snow, scattering light like tiny stars. The path continued beyond, winding through quiet hills, promising more discoveries, more lantern-lit evenings, and more moments of gentle watch over the world. Chapter 8: A Lantern in the Mountain Village. The traveler descended from the snowy hills into a small mountain village, where wooden houses huddled together beneath thick eaves. Smoke rose gently from chimneys, curling into the pale evening sky. A single lantern swayed from a post at the village entrance, its warm glow casting soft shadows across the narrow stone-paved streets. The village was quiet, yet alive in its subtle rhythms. A child's laugh echoed briefly from a distant courtyard, followed by the soft clatter of dishes. A cat padded along the edge of a wooden fence, its eyes reflecting the lantern light. The traveler walked slowly, savoring the calm, letting each detail be noticed without hurry. In the center of the village, a small shrine stood, its lanterns already lit. The traveler paused, feeling the gentle hum of stillness and the quiet sense of watchfulness. Each lantern seemed to hold a memory of countless nights, of countless travelers who had paused to rest, to reflect, to simply be. The notebook opened, and the traveler wrote, "A lantern in the mountain village waits for nothing, yet it gives everything guidance, warmth, and a quiet presence that speaks without words." The evening deepened, and the traveler found a place to rest for the night. Comforted by the knowledge that the lantern would continue its gentle watch long after footsteps had faded into silence. Chapter 9: The Silent Lake. The next morning, the traveler reached a lake nestled between hills, its surface as smooth and still as glass. Mist hovered just above the water, soft and pale, blurring the line between lake and sky. No birds called, no wind stirred, only the quiet reflection of clouds and the first light of the sun. A wooden pier extended into the water, its boards dark with moisture. The traveler stepped onto it slowly, letting the gentle sway beneath their feet become a rhythm in itself. The lake seemed to hold a world in suspension, a place where moments could be measured not in hours but in breaths. Around the edges of the lake, reeds bent lightly under the weight of dew. Occasionally, a fish broke the surface, sending ripples outward in concentric circles that shimmered with morning light. The traveler closed their eyes, listening to the faint sound of water against wood, the soft rustle of leaves, the world waking quietly without urgency. The notebook opened once again. The lake offers nothing but stillness, and stillness offers everything. In its silence, every heartbeat becomes a part of the landscape. The traveler remained for a long while, knowing that some places were meant to pause the journey, to teach patience, and to remind that even in solitude, the world watches gently, like a lantern burning softly in the night. Chapter 10: The Return Journey. The traveler boarded the train once more, the same gentle hum of the rails welcoming them as an old friend. Outside, the countryside passed in soft, familiar shapes, hills rolling into one another. Rivers winding like silver ribbons, forests standing silently as guardians of time. Memories of each stop lingered like lantern light in the mind, the riverside glow, the wooden bridge at dawn, the garden of falling leaves, the tea house with its warm tea, the temple bell tolling in twilight, the snow-covered path, the mountain village lanterns, and the silent lake. Each moment had been small, yet immense in its quiet presence. Inside the train, the traveler opened the notebook for the last time. The pages were filled with short lines, gentle observations, reflections that had arisen slowly, patiently, as the journey unfolded. Every place has its own quiet watch. Every step along the path is witnessed by light, by water, by the breath of the world itself. The train carried the traveler steadily back toward the city, but there was no sense of leaving. Each memory traveled alongside, glowing softly like lanterns in the mind, ready to be recalled whenever stillness was needed. Epilogue: the lantern's gentle watch. Night had fallen, and the traveler finally returned to the city, its familiar lights sparkling against the dark sky. Yet the journey had left a trace that could not be erased. In the quiet moments before sleep, while a cup of tea cooled, or while rain tapped softly on the window, the traveler could remember the gentle watch of lanterns, the slow passage of rivers, the hush of snow, and the calm of twilight. The notebook lay closed on the table. Its pages contained words, yes, but more than that, the essence of calm, of patience, of attention to the quiet heartbeat of the world. Somewhere in the city, a street lantern flickered, its light steady and unassuming. And in that glow, the traveler felt the presence of every moment from the journey. All the small lights, all the silent watches, all the gentle witnesses of a world that moves, yet pauses for those willing to notice. The lantern watches, always. And so do I. The city slept. The traveler slept, and the world, vast and quiet, continued its gentle watch, endless and patient, as it had always done. Whispers of the Cedar Forest. Prologue: the first breath of the forest. The morning mist hung low over the forest, softening the edges of the cedar trees. Their tall, straight trunks stretched upward, disappearing into a pale veil of fog. Every branch and needle seemed to hum with quiet energy, a gentle whisper that the traveler felt before he saw it. He stepped onto the forest path slowly, sandals brushing lightly against the moss-covered earth. The air was cool, scented faintly with pine and damp soil, carrying the subtle sound of distant water trickling over stones. Each inhalation filled him with the calm of the forest. Each exhale released the worries and noise of the outside world. The path ahead was not hurried, it was not meant for arrival, but for moving gently, moment by moment, into the rhythm of the cedar tree's whispers. A single bird called from somewhere high above, its voice soft, echoing through the trunks. The traveler listened, letting the sound mingle with his own heartbeat, and felt the forest fold around him like a protective cloak. Chapter 1: The Path Among the Cedars. The forest path wound gradually, bordered by ferns and scattered fallen needles. Light filtered through the dense canopy, painting the ground with dappled patterns of gold and green. The traveler walked slowly, mindful of every step. The cedar trunks rose like silent sentinels, their bark rough beneath his fingertips when he brushed against them. A faint breeze stirred, carrying with it the scent of resin and the faint sweetness of distant flowers. Occasionally, a cedar needle would fall, landing softly on the traveler's shoulder or in the moss beneath his feet. Each touch was gentle, like a quiet greeting from the forest itself. He paused near a small clearing, where sunlight pooled upon the ground. The air seemed to shimmer slightly, as if the forest held its breath in this quiet space. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the warmth of light and the whisper of leaves fill him with calm. He felt time slow, each breath harmonizing with the subtle rhythm of the forest. Inhale, listen to the whispers, exhale, release and let go. The path ahead was long, but every step was part of a continuous, gentle meditation. Chapter 2: Deep Within the Forest. The traveler followed the path deeper into the cedar forest. The trees grew closer together here, their trunks tall and straight, stretching into the mist above. The canopy was dense, allowing only faint shafts of light to reach the forest floor. Each step was cushioned by layers of fallen needles and moss. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying the subtle scent of cedar resin and damp earth. A quiet hum seemed to resonate from the trees themselves, a gentle rhythm that matched the traveler's slow breathing. He paused beneath an ancient cedar, placing a hand on its rough bark. The texture was grounding, and he felt a deep, calm energy emanating from the tree. Around him, small sounds of the forest, a bird's faint call, the rustle of leaves, a distant trickle of water blended into a natural lullaby. Time seemed suspended. Each step, each breath, each rustle of the forest felt like part of a continuous, unbroken meditation. The traveler walked on, not seeking anything, only moving gently through the whispering forest. Chapter 3: Beside the Quiet Stream. Soon, the path led to a small stream winding quietly through the forest. The water flowed over smooth stones, clear and cool, carrying fallen cedar needles and the occasional drifting petal. The traveler knelt by the water's edge, letting his fingers touch the gentle current. The coldness was sharp at first, then soothing, like the forest itself washing away fatigue and tension. Above, the cedars arched like natural columns, their branches swaying lightly in the breeze. The faint shimmer of sunlight on the water, the soft ripple of the stream, and the whisper of needles falling from the trees created a serene, almost hypnotic rhythm. He closed his eyes, inhaling the cool air and exhaling slowly, feeling the stream's quiet flow align with his own heartbeat. In this moment, he understood that the journey was not toward a destination. It was a continuous dance with stillness, each step a breath, each breath a connection to the forest around him. Chapter 4: The Moss-Covered Steps. The path began to rise gradually, leading to a flight of ancient stone steps. Each step was worn smooth by countless footsteps and covered in a soft carpet of moss. Fallen cedar needles and scattered petals added a touch of color to the deep green surface. The traveler placed each foot carefully, feeling the gentle give of moss beneath his sandals. The forest was quiet, yet alive with subtle sounds: the faint rustle of leaves, the distant trickle of a stream, the soft creak of a branch swaying in the breeze. He paused midway up the steps, placing a hand on the rough stone railing. The cool texture grounded him, and he inhaled deeply, letting the scent of pine and damp earth fill his lungs. Each exhale released tension, each step forward carried him deeper into the forest's calm. At the top, a small clearing opened, bathed in soft, dappled sunlight. The traveler lingered, appreciating the stillness, the gentle rhythm of his steps, and the quiet harmony of the moss-covered stones around him. Chapter 5: The Front Garden of the Tea House. Beyond the stone steps, the traveler discovered a small, old tea house. Its wooden roof was darkened by age, and a few cherry trees leaned over the entrance, their petals drifting lazily onto the ground. A small gravel path led to the sliding door, bordered by moss and ferns. He approached slowly, noticing the subtle details: the faint fragrance of brewing tea, the gentle hum of the wind in bamboo, the soft sound of petals landing on the roof and stones. He bowed lightly before the entrance, acknowledging the quiet presence of the place. Inside, the tatami mats were warm beneath his feet, and the low hearth emitted a gentle, steady heat. The attendant offered a steaming cup of tea, and he accepted it, holding it between his palms. The warmth seeped through, filling him with a calm that matched the rhythm of the forest outside. He sipped slowly, savoring the flavor and the silence. Each moment was unhurried, every sound a gentle accompaniment, the wind brushing through the cedars, the faint murmur of a stream, the soft settling of petals. When he finally set the cup down, he rose with a sense of lightness, carrying the quiet energy of the tea house and the surrounding forest into the next part of his journey. Chapter 6. By the flowing stream. The path led the traveler beside a gentle stream winding through the forest. The water flowed quietly over smooth stones, carrying fallen cedar needles and the occasional petal from a distant cherry tree. He knelt at the water's edge, letting his fingers touch the cool, clear current. The sensation was grounding, and the faint trickle of the stream blended seamlessly with the whisper of leaves and the subtle hum of the forest. Above, cedar branches swayed lightly in the breeze. Shafts of sunlight filtered through, glinting on the ripples and scattered needles. The traveler closed his eyes, breathing in rhythm with the water. Inhale, notice the flow. Exhale, release any lingering tension. Each moment felt suspended in gentle time. The stream, the forest, and the falling needles formed a quiet lullaby that resonated within him, carrying a sense of calm deeper into his being. Chapter 7. The small wooden bridge. A short distance ahead, the path led to a small wooden bridge arching over the stream. Frost from the early morning still lingered on the planks, making each step soft and muted. The traveler stepped onto the bridge slowly. Petals and cedar needles drifted down from the branches above, landing gently on the railing and the water below. The reflection of the sky shimmered in the rippling current, forming delicate patterns that moved with the flow. He paused halfway across, resting his hands on the wooden railing. The bridge felt like a moment suspended, connecting one side of the forest to the other while allowing him to linger in quiet observation. The sound of water flowing beneath, combined with the soft rustle of leaves and falling petals, created a rhythm that matched his own breathing. Each inhale was cool and grounding, each exhale released tension, leaving only serenity. After a long pause, he continued onward, carrying the quiet energy of the stream and bridge into the next path of the cedar forest. Chapter 8. The Old Shrine. The traveler followed a narrow trail that wound between cedar roots and mossy stones until it revealed a small, weathered shrine. Its wooden frame was softened by age, and moss clung to its roof like a quiet crown. Fallen petals and cedar needles had gathered at the steps, forming a delicate offering from the forest itself. He approached slowly, bowing his head as he stood before the shrine. The silence here was deeper, carrying a sense of reverence. He brushed away a few petals from the stone basin and poured a dipper of water across his hands. The coolness was sharp, refreshing, as though the forest were lending him its clarity. A small bell hung above the doorway. When he pulled the cord, the sound rang out softly, low and resonant, fading slowly into the cedar trunks around him. The bell's echo lingered, mingling with the rustle of branches, until it dissolved into silence again. The traveler remained still, breathing deeply. He felt the presence of countless footsteps that had once paused here, their quiet prayers now woven into the fabric of the shrine. When he finally stepped away, the calm of the place remained within him, as steady as the roots of the great trees. Chapter 9: The Bamboo Wind Chimes. Beyond the shrine, the forest thinned into a small grove of bamboo. The stalks rose tall and slender, swaying lightly in the evening air. From several branches, wind chimes made of bamboo tubes hung, their hollow tones sounding gently as the breeze moved through them. The traveler stood beneath them, closing his eyes. Each note was soft and fleeting, carrying a natural rhythm without melody, yet harmonizing with the rustle of leaves. It was as if the wind itself had found a voice, speaking gently through the bamboo. The moonlight began to spread across the grove, catching the smooth green stalks and casting shifting patterns across the frost-dusted ground. The wind chimes, the shadows, and the subtle fragrance of bamboo created a tranquil rhythm that matched his breath, slow, deep, unhurried. For a time, he lingered in the grove, letting the soft tones wash over him. The sound was not only heard but felt, as though each chime resonated within his chest. When he moved on, the music seemed to follow him, a companion of wind and silence, carrying the essence of the forest deeper into the night. Chapter 10: The Clearing in the Forest. After hours beneath the towering cedars, the path opened into a quiet clearing. The ground was soft with moss, touched by frost that sparkled faintly under the moonlight. A single pine stood in the center, tall and solitary, its branches stretching wide like a guardian of the space. The traveler lowered himself onto a fallen log and sat in silence. The clearing seemed to hold its own breath, still and patient. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the faint fragrance of cedar resin and the crisp scent of earth. He closed his eyes, and time seemed to dissolve. The clearing was not empty but filled with subtle sounds: the quiet flutter of wings, the distant murmur of water, the soft fall of needles. Each sound aligned with his breathing, steady and calm. In that moment, the traveler understood that the clearing was a mirror of himself, open, still, and quietly alive. When he finally rose to continue, the hush of the place lingered, as if he carried the entire clearing within his chest. Chapter 11 The Frosted Bridge. The path soon led him to a narrow wooden bridge spanning a stream. A layer of frost covered the planks, glowing softly beneath the moonlight. His steps were muted, each one pressing lightly into the cold wood. Petals and cedar needles drifted down from the branches above, landing gently on the railing and the frozen water below. The world was hushed, as though holding still for this solitary moment. Midway across, the traveler paused. He rested his hands on the railing, feeling the chill seep into his skin. Beneath, the water flowed quietly, half hidden beneath a thin sheet of ice. Moonlight shimmered on its surface, reflecting stars that trembled with every ripple. His breath slowed, matching the rhythm of the stream. Inhale, pause. Exhale, pause. The bridge became more than a crossing, it became a place of stillness, a moment suspended in the quiet conversation between frost, water, and sky. When he stepped off the bridge, the silence followed him, like an unseen companion walking beside his every step. Chapter 12 The Misty Hill at Dusk. The traveler climbed a gentle slope where the cedars gave way to rolling hills. From the crest, the view stretched wide valleys shrouded in mist. Distant pines fading into the horizon, and a sky painted in shades of amber and violet as the sun sank lower. He stood still, letting the cool air brush against his face. The mist rose slowly, wrapping the hills in soft veils, as if the earth itself exhaled into the evening. Each breath he took mingled with that quiet haze, making him feel part of the landscape rather than apart from it. Birdsong faded into silence, replaced by the faint rustle of leaves. The traveler watched as shadows lengthened, blending into the soft folds of dusk. Time no longer felt like a line but a circle, as if this twilight moment had been repeated for countless seasons. When the first stars appeared above the mist, he bowed lightly toward the hills before descending again, carrying the calm of twilight within him. Chapter 13 Morning in the Village. By dawn, the traveler reached a small village at the forest's edge. Frost covered the rooftops in a silver sheen, and smoke curled gently from chimneys, carrying the scent of burning cedar wood into the cool morning air. Sliding doors creaked open, and villagers stepped into the day quietly, offering nods and warm greetings. Water splashed from buckets at the well, and the muffled rhythm of sweeping brooms echoed through the narrow lanes. The traveler walked slowly among them, noticing the details, the glimmer of sunlight on tiled roofs. The faint fragrance of rice cooking, the quiet laughter of children chasing drifting petals. Each sound and scent felt like part of the same steady rhythm that he had carried with him through the forest. In the village square, he paused, inhaling deeply. The morning light softened everything it touched, and the world seemed renewed. As he exhaled, he felt the night's whispers dissolve, replaced by the calm assurance of a new day. Chapter 14. A breath beneath the pines. Leaving the village behind, the traveler followed a gentle slope back into the forest. The path narrowed, winding between roots and stones, until he reached a grove of tall pines standing like pillars of quiet strength. He paused beneath one of the great trees, its trunk wide and steady. Leaning gently against it, he allowed himself a long, unhurried breath. The scent of resin and earth filled the air, grounding him in the present moment. Above, the pine branches swayed slowly, whispering with the wind. Their sound was neither loud nor restless, it was patient, calm, like an old friend's voice. The traveler listened, breathing in harmony with the trees. Inhale the branches rise. Exhale the forest sighs. Time stretched softly, without measure. In the shade of the pine, he felt his thoughts loosen, as though each breath carried them away like drifting needles on the wind. When he finally stepped forward again, the quiet strength of the pines seemed to follow, walking beside him as he continued on the path. Chapter 15. The Twilight Stream. As evening deepened, the traveler came upon a small stream winding gently through the forest. The water glimmered with the last light of day, catching the orange and violet hues of the twilight sky. He crouched by the bank, listening to the steady murmur of water slipping over stones. The sound was soft yet unbroken, a reminder of the forest's eternal rhythm. He dipped his hands into the stream, feeling the coolness wash over his skin before dripping back into the current. Petals and cedar needles floated downstream, spinning lightly before disappearing around the bend. The traveler followed their slow journey with his eyes, as if they carried fragments of his own thoughts into the fading light. The first stars began to shimmer in the water's reflection. He breathed in slowly, letting the cool air settle into his chest. Exhaling, he felt a quiet release, as if the stream itself had carried his breath away. When darkness finally settled, the stream remained luminous, holding the whispers of twilight within its flow. The traveler rose gently, ready to follow the night's path deeper into the cedar forest. Chapter 16. The Garden of Lanterns. As the traveler wandered deeper into the cedar forest, the path opened to a garden dotted with stone lanterns. Moss grew thick around their bases, and their weathered surfaces bore the marks of countless seasons. Each lantern held a faint glow, a soft golden light that flickered gently, as if breathing with the night. The traveler strolled between them, his steps light upon the frost-dusted ground. Shadows danced across the stones, stretching and retreating with every movement of the flame within. The air smelled faintly of cedar smoke and pine needles, carrying a timeless stillness. He paused before one lantern, tracing the carved patterns with his eyes. The glow within seemed to whisper of those who had once tended the light, their care now woven into the present. The traveler bowed slightly, feeling a quiet gratitude. As he moved through the garden, the lanterns marked his way like stars upon the earth, guiding him toward the path that continued beyond the trees. Chapter 17 The Starlit Path. Leaving the lanterns behind, the traveler stepped onto a narrow trail that wound upward. The canopy opened slowly, and soon the forest gave way to an open ridge beneath the vast night sky. Stars spread endlessly above, clear and bright, their light spilling across the cedar peaks. The traveler stopped, his breath caught in quiet wonder. The world seemed both infinite and intimate, the stars far above, yet mirrored in the frost glittering along the path. He strolled, each step steady, listening to the silence that stretched between the trees and the heavens. The crunch of frost beneath his feet was the only sound, blending with the rhythm of his breath. Inhale, he gazed at the stars. Exhale, he felt their light settle into him. At a bend in the path, he paused to sit on a smooth stone. Looking upward, he allowed himself to simply exist beneath the sky. No thought pressed forward, no worry clung, only the vast stillness of stars and the quiet of the forest night. When he rose again, the starlight seemed to follow him, illuminating his way back into the cedar shadows. Chapter 18 The Mirror of the Lake. The traveler descended into a quiet hollow where a lake rested at the heart of the forest. Its surface was still, like polished glass, reflecting the stars above with flawless clarity. The moon hung low, and its silver light stretched across the water, forming a glowing path that seemed to invite him closer. He approached the edge and knelt, gazing into the mirrored sky beneath him. For a moment, it was impossible to tell where the heavens ended and the lake began. Stars shimmered both above and below, and the forest around him appeared to float between two skies. He dipped his hand into the water. Ripples spread outward, scattering the reflected constellations into soft fragments before they slowly gathered again into stillness. Watching this, he felt as though his own thoughts had been touched, scattered, and gently returned to calm. A cedar needle floated across the lake's surface, carried silently toward the moon's reflection. The traveler watched until it vanished into the shimmer, a quiet reminder of the forest's eternal rhythm. Chapter 19: The Mountain Path at Dawn. Leaving the lake, the traveler followed a trail that wound upward into the hills. The eastern sky was beginning to pale, a faint glow spreading across the horizon. Each step crunched softly against the frost, the cool air carrying the promise of morning. The higher he climbed, the more the forest opened. Shadows retreated, and the first light of dawn touched the cedar tops with soft gold. Birds began to stir, their calls hesitant at first, then growing into a gentle chorus that welcomed the day. At a small ridge, the traveler paused. The world below was veiled in mist, valleys and rivers hidden beneath its folds. Above, the sky bloomed with color rose, amber, and pale blue blending like brushstrokes on a vast canvas. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Inhale the coolness of night's end. Exhale the warmth of day's beginning. The rhythm of his breath aligned with the rising sun, carrying him forward with a quiet sense of renewal. As the path continued, the traveler stepped into the dawn, his shadow stretching long before him, guided by the promise of the day. Epilogue: The quiet return. The traveler descended once more into the cedar forest. Morning light filtered through the tall trunks, soft and golden, casting long beams across the mossy ground. The forest, once filled with whispers of night and stars, now breathed in a gentle rhythm of awakening. He followed the path back toward the village, yet each step carried the stillness of his journey: the flowing stream, the frost-kissed bridge, the lanterns glowing in silence, and the endless sky of stars. These moments lingered not as memories, but as part of him woven into his breath, his heartbeat, his quiet gaze. At the forest's edge, he turned once more, bowing slightly toward the towering cedars. Their branches swayed softly, as if offering a final blessing. A reminder that the forest would remain steadfast, eternal, holding its whispers for all who sought them. With that, the traveler continued, the path opening before him into the light of day. Yet within, he carried the hush of the cedar forest, a timeless companion that would guide him wherever he wandered. And as the forest exhaled, the world seemed to pause, settling into a silence deep enough to cradle rest. Moonlight touching the temple roof. Prologue: The silent roof. On a gentle hillside stood a temple, its roof wide and curved like the wings of a great bird at rest. The tiles glimmered faintly as moonlight touched them, each one carrying the sheen of countless nights. A hush surrounded the place, deeper than silence, filled with the weight of centuries. The traveler approached along a stone path lined with lanterns, each unlit but glowing faintly in the moon's reflection. The temple gates were closed, yet not forbidding. They seemed instead like folded hands at rest, guarding the quiet within. He paused at the base of the steps. Looking upward, he let his gaze rest on the roof where moonlight pooled like water on still stone. Breathing slowly, he felt the night draw him inward, as if the temple itself were whispering "Enter," and let go. Chapter 1: The Temple Courtyard. The wooden gates opened with a muted creak, revealing the courtyard. Frost shimmered across the paving stones, and the air carried the faint fragrance of pine and incense. The traveler stepped carefully, each footfall softened by the night's stillness. To one side stood a weathered stone basin, filled with clear water that mirrored the moon above. He dipped his hands, letting the coolness run over his skin before touching it gently to his face. The sensation was sharp, yet calming, as if the forest and temple together offered their blessing. A pine tree leaned over the courtyard, its needles catching the light and scattering it like silver threads. The traveler lingered beneath it, listening to the quiet sound of wind weaving through branches. The rhythm of the night seemed to settle into him, steadying his breath and loosening the weight of his thoughts. In that courtyard, under the moonlit roof, he understood the journey was not only through the temple grounds, but through the stillness within himself. Chapter 2: The Echo of the Bell Tower. Beyond the courtyard, the traveler found the temple's bell tower rising against the sky. Its wooden frame was dark with age, yet the great bronze bell gleamed softly under the touch of moonlight. He approached slowly, placing his hand against the smooth wood of the beam that once struck the bell. Though silent now, the air seemed to remember its deep voice. The stillness carried a lingering echo, as if each toll remained folded within the night. He closed his eyes, imagining the sound spreading outward, rolling over rooftops, forests, and distant hills. The echo was not heavy, but soft, dissolving into the vast silence like ripples fading on water. Breathing in, he felt the calm weight of that memory settle within him. Breathing out, he sensed the echo extend beyond himself, joining the rhythm of the night. Though the bell stood silent, it spoke quietly through the stillness, a reminder that even silence holds sound. Chapter 3: Shadows along the corridor. From the bell tower, a narrow wooden corridor led deeper into the temple. Lanterns hung from the eaves, unlit, yet the moonlight filled their glass with a pale glow. The traveler stepped onto the polished boards, each footfall softened by the long passage of time. Shadows of the roof beams stretched across the floor in quiet patterns, shifting gently as branches swayed in the night breeze. The traveler moved slowly, tracing the shifting shapes with his eyes. They seemed alive, like silent companions walking beside him. The corridor turned, then turned again, winding gently around the temple's heart. At each corner, the play of shadow and light revealed new patterns, lattices of moonlight, fleeting fragments of pine needles. Faint glimmers where frost had touched the wood. He breathed with the rhythm of his steps, inhale with the lift of light, exhale with the deepening of shadow. The temple seemed to draw him inward, not through its walls, but through the dance of stillness and movement. By the time he reached the end of the corridor, he felt as though the shadows had carried away the last remnants of his restless thoughts, leaving only calm. Chapter 4: The Stone Lanterns in the Garden. The traveler stepped from the corridor into a wide garden, where frost glistened like silver dust upon the moss. Stone lanterns stood among sculpted pines and raked gravel, their weathered surfaces softened by centuries of wind and rain. Though no flame burned within them, the lanterns seemed to glow faintly, as if the moon itself had taken residence in their hollow chambers. He walked slowly along the path of stepping stones. Each step pressed lightly into the frost, leaving only the gentlest of marks. A lantern by the path leaned slightly to one side, its top covered with a thin sheet of lichen. The traveler paused before it, bowing his head in quiet acknowledgement. The silence of the garden was not empty, it was filled with a rhythm deeper than sound. The branches swayed softly overhead, the frost glimmered beneath, and the stone lanterns stood like timeless guardians, holding the memory of light. Breathing deeply, the traveler felt that the garden itself was an offering, a place where stillness was the flame, and moonlight the eternal glow. Chapter 5: The Moon Reflected in the Pond. At the far edge of the garden lay a pond, its surface perfectly still. Frost gathered along the stones of its banks, and pine needles floated quietly across the water. Above, the moon shone clear and bright, mirrored upon the pond's surface. With such precision that the traveler could not tell which sky was more real, the one above, or the one beneath. He knelt at the edge, watching as a single breeze stirred the reflection. The moon fractured into ripples, scattering like pearls across dark silk, before slowly gathering again into one whole circle. The traveler's breath moved with it, dispersing, returning, becoming whole. Nearby, a carp rose briefly, sending gentle rings outward across the pond. The ripples touched the moon's image, yet did not break it. Instead, The light seemed to dance with the motion, shimmering quietly before returning to stillness. The traveler lingered there, gazing into both skies at once. Above and below, the moon held him, steady and unhurried, as though time itself had chosen to rest in the pond. Chapter 6: The shoji screens of the study hall. The traveler entered a long hall, its wooden boards polished by countless footsteps. At one side, paper screens shoji slid open to reveal the garden beyond. The moonlight shone through the delicate paper, casting soft silver rectangles across the floor. He paused, placing his hand lightly upon the cool frame of one screen. The paper surface glowed gently, diffusing the night into a tender radiance. It was not harsh like sunlight, but soothing, like the quiet breath of the temple itself. Sitting upon a cushion by the screens, he gazed outward. The shadows of pine branches moved across the glowing panels, drawing shifting patterns that faded as quickly as they formed. He found his own breathing following that same rhythm. Inhale with the pattern's rise, exhale with its soft dissolution. In the silence, the traveler felt as though he, too, had become part of the shoji's light, translucent, fleeting, yet resting calmly in the embrace of the night. Chapter 7: Pines stirring in the wind. Beyond the study hall, the traveler returned once more to the temple's outer grounds. A tall grove of pines rose against the night sky, their trunks dark and straight, their branches swaying with the slow breath of wind. He stood beneath them, tilting his head upward. The needles whispered as the air moved through them, their sound like distant waves breaking gently upon a shore. The rustling did not disturb the stillness but deepened it, carrying the night's calm into every corner. A few needles drifted down, spinning lazily until they touched the frost-dusted earth. The traveler watched them fall, each descent a quiet reminder of time's passage. Yet the trees themselves stood strong, rooted and enduring, as if whispering patience. All things returned to stillness. Closing his eyes, he let the wind pass over him, carrying away the last fragments of tension. When he opened them again, the moon was visible through the branches, its light scattered like silver threads across the grove. Chapter 8: Frost upon the stone steps. The traveler moved toward the temple's stone stairway, which descended gently toward the outer gate. Each step was wide and worn smooth by centuries of pilgrims, and now each one gleamed faintly beneath a thin layer of frost. He placed his foot carefully, hearing the soft crunch beneath his sandals. The sound was delicate, almost musical, echoing faintly through the stillness of the night. The steps carried him downward slowly, and with each movement, he felt himself sinking deeper into quiet. A cedar branch leaned across the stairway, scattering a few needles that drifted lightly to the stones. They rested there, caught in the frost, as if frozen in mid-fall. The traveler paused to watch, breathing in the cool air, the mist of his exhale briefly visible before it dissolved into the moonlight. Every step downward felt like a letting go. Each crunch of frost beneath him was a soft reminder that even in stillness, the world continues its gentle rhythm. Chapter 9 Dawn at the Mountain Gate. At the bottom of the steps stood the great wooden gate, tall and solemn. Its beams reached skyward, their silhouettes sharp against the fading night. The traveler stood before it, gazing upward as the first colors of dawn began to touch the horizon. The gate, once cloaked in shadow, slowly revealed its details. The grain of the wood, the worn edges of the carvings, the faint traces of moss all became clear as morning light grew. The sky shifted from indigo to pale rose, and with it, the temple seemed to awaken. Birds began their first calls, hesitant at first, then weaving into a quiet chorus that filled the mountain air. The frost upon the stones glimmered as it softened, releasing the moisture of night into the warmth of day. The traveler bowed lightly to the gate, acknowledging both the temple behind him and the world before him. As he stepped beyond, the path stretched outward into mist and morning light. Chapter 10 The Wind Through the Bamboo Grove. Beyond the mountain gate, the path curved downward into a grove of bamboo. Tall stalks rose in perfect lines, their smooth surfaces gleaming faintly where the dawn light touched them. The traveler stepped into the grove, and at once the air shifted cool, light, alive with movement. A breeze moved through, bending the stalks in a slow, graceful rhythm. Their hollow bodies knocked gently against one another, producing a soft, resonant sound that echoed like distant chimes. The grove seemed to breathe with the wind, inhaling and exhaling in long, patient intervals. The traveler stopped to listen. Each note, each whisper of bamboo against bamboo, carried a calmness that reached deep within him. Shadows wavered across the ground, shifting patterns of light and dark that moved with the rhythm of sound. Closing his eyes, he let the grove's voice surround him. In that moment, the world outside faded, only the soft music of the bamboo and the steady beat of his own heart remained. Chapter 11 Morning in the Village. At the end of the bamboo grove, the path opened into a small village nestled in the valley. Morning had fully arrived. Smoke drifted gently from thatched rooftops, carrying with it the fragrance of cedarwood fires. The chill of night lifted slowly, replaced by the warmth of the sun's first rays. The traveler entered quietly, his footsteps blending with the rhythms of daily life. He heard the sound of brooms sweeping frost from wooden thresholds, the splash of water drawn from the well, and the laughter of children chasing drifting petals down the narrow lanes. He paused near the village square, watching as shopkeepers opened their doors and greeted one another with quiet bows. A dog stretched lazily in the sunlight, its breath visible in the cool morning air before it settled into stillness again. The traveler closed his eyes for a moment. The sound of the village, gentle, unhurried, seemed to echo the forest, the temple, the bell, the bamboo. Each place carried its own rhythm, yet all flowed into the same calm current. Breathing in, he felt the warmth of morning settle into him. Breathing out, he released the night's last traces. Chapter 12: The Path Beside the River. The traveler followed a narrow path leading from the village toward the river. Morning had grown into day, and the sun, though gentle, shimmered brightly upon the flowing water. The river wound slowly through the fields, its surface catching fragments of sky and drifting clouds. Grasses along the bank bent in the breeze, their tips glistening with dew that had not yet vanished in the warmth. The traveler knelt at the edge, listening. The river's voice was steady, unhurried, a low murmur that carried both near and far. Pebbles beneath the current shifted softly, adding a faint rhythm like distant bells. He dipped his hand into the stream. The water was cool and clear, wrapping his fingers in its soft current before slipping away. He watched as fallen petals floated past, carried along without resistance, each one finding its own course. Walking further along the path, the traveler felt as though he, too, was part of the river's journey. Moving forward gently, never rushing, always finding the way. Chapter 13: The Hill at Dusk. By evening, the traveler reached a quiet hill overlooking both the river and the village below. The sky was painted with layers of gold and soft crimson, deepening slowly into violet as the sun lowered. He climbed to the crest, where tall grasses swayed in the evening air. From there, the world stretched wide, the roofs of the village glowing faintly in the last light. The temple far above like a shadow against the sky, and the distant mountains resting in indigo silence. Birds circled overhead, their wings catching the light before vanishing into the darkening trees. A bell rang faintly from the village shrine, its sound mingling with the quiet hum of insects rising with the night. The traveler sat upon a flat stone, watching the sun sink beyond the horizon. The grasses rustled gently around him, brushing against his sleeves, and the cool air carried the fragrance of earth and pine. As the last edge of sunlight faded, the first stars appeared, one, then another, then a slow scattering across the heavens. The traveler closed his eyes, breathing in the deep calm of dusk. Chapter 14 Fields Under Starlight. The traveler walked through quiet fields, their edges lined with low hedges and old stone markers. The night had fully settled, and the sky above was deep and clear, dotted with countless stars. Moonlight touched the tips of the crops, turning each blade of grass into silver threads swaying in the gentle breeze. He paused for a moment, breathing in the crisp night air. The world felt vast yet intimate, every sound magnified in its stillness, the rustle of leaves, the distant croak of a frog, the whisper of wind across the fields. Walking slowly, he let each step follow the rhythm of his breath, inhale the stars above, exhale the earth beneath. Occasionally, a petal or leaf drifted past, carried by the night as if it too were on a quiet journey. The traveler felt a sense of calm settle into his chest. Each step through the fields was a meditation, each glance at the shimmering crops a reminder that even in darkness, there was light. Chapter 15 The Path Back to the Temple. Eventually, the path curved back toward the temple that had begun this journey. The roof glimmered faintly in the distance under the silvered moonlight, a familiar beacon of peace. He walked slowly, listening to the night sounds, crickets, the wind in pine branches, the distant echo of the bell tower. Each sound seemed to guide him forward, a gentle chorus accompanying his steps. As he reached the temple gates, he paused and looked upward. The moon rested directly above the roof, casting a quiet glow across the courtyard. The stone steps, the lanterns, and the pond reflected the soft light, welcoming him home without ceremony or rush. He entered the courtyard, letting his footsteps soften. Sitting quietly on the wooden veranda, he gazed at the moon's reflection in the pond, and for a long while, he simply breathed inhale, exhale. Aligned with the slow rhythm of the temple and the night. In that serene moment, he realized that the journey had been both outward and inward. The temple, the fields, the river, and the hills were not only places he had visited, they were spaces he now carried within himself, where moonlight and stillness would always await. Chapter 16 The Bell Tower at Night. The traveler rose quietly from the veranda and wandered toward the bell tower, standing tall at the edge of the temple grounds. Its wooden beams loomed in the moonlight, dark yet gentle, carrying the weight of centuries. No hand touched the bell that night, yet the traveler felt as if its deep voice still lingered in the air. He approached slowly, resting a palm upon the cool wood of the great supporting pillar. Beneath his fingers, he sensed the grain, each line a record of storms weathered, seasons endured. He sat upon the stone base, listening. The silence was not empty, it was filled with the memory of sound. Somewhere within the night, the faintest hum echoed, like the last breath of a struck bell, still reverberating through unseen spaces. Closing his eyes, the traveler allowed the imagined resonance to wash through him, steady and low, carrying away all unrest. In that quiet communion, the bell tower was not only a structure but a presence, a guardian of stillness beneath the moon. Chapter 17 The Garden in Moonlight. From the tower, the traveler walked back toward the garden. The stone lanterns, the pond, and the pines all rested in a silver glow. Shadows lengthened across the raked gravel, delicate patterns shifting as branches moved softly in the night breeze. He stepped onto the path of stepping stones, careful and slow, as though he were walking not upon earth but across the surface of a dream. The pond reflected both the roof of the temple and the shining moon, its water perfectly still. A carp rose again, breaking the surface for only a moment before vanishing beneath. Ripples spread outward, touching the reflected moon, which shimmered and reformed. The traveler smiled faintly, knowing that even in disturbance, stillness could return. At last, he sat upon a low bench, folding his hands in his lap. The air was cool, yet gentle, carrying the fragrance of moss and pine. Above him, stars scattered across the vast sky below, their reflection shimmered upon the pond. Between the two skies, he rested in peace. Chapter 18 The Night's Gentle Embrace. The traveler remained in the temple garden until the night deepened fully. The world had grown still, every sound softened into silence. Even the wind had ceased, as if pausing in reverence for the moon's quiet reign. He lay down upon the veranda, resting his head against the wooden planks polished by time. The wood carried the coolness of night, yet beneath it was a warmth, as though countless souls who had once rested there had left behind their peace. The branches overhead swayed faintly, their shadows dancing across the shoji screens. The pond reflected both stars and moon, holding the night as if it were a mirror of eternity. The traveler's breath slowed, his thoughts dissolving like ripples upon water. He felt the weight of his body give way to lightness, his spirit drifting gently toward the quiet realm of dreams. Within that stillness, he understood the journey had never been about reaching a place, but about discovering the unbroken calm already within him. And so, beneath the temple roof touched by moonlight, he surrendered himself to rest. Epilogue: A Journey Within. The dawn that followed rose quietly, as dawns always do. Yet the traveler did not stir with its first light. His sleep was deep and untroubled, as steady as the mountains, as soft as the moss beneath the pines. In dreams, he walked again the paths he had known, the stone steps glittering with frost, the bamboo swaying in the wind, the river carrying petals downstream. He heard the bell's low voice, felt the gate's embrace, and watched the stars appear over the hill at dusk. Each place was not separate, but joined threads of a single tapestry woven of silence, breath, and light. The journey outward had always been a journey inward, toward a stillness that could not be broken. When he finally woke, the temple was the same, and yet the world felt new. He rose, bowed to the roof that had sheltered him, and stepped forward, carrying the moonlight not only above him but within. For wherever he would go, the quiet breath of the temple, the river, the fields, and the sky would remain. And with them, the gentle truth that peace is not found, it is remembered. The quiet call of night crickets. Prologue, a gentle prelude of night. The village lay in a quiet valley, surrounded by fields of rice that shimmered faintly beneath the moonlight. The evening had grown cool, and the last traces of daylight had long faded into the deep indigo of night. Here, silence was not the absence of sound but its own presence woven with the soft rustle of grass. The gentle flowing of a stream, and above all, the steady chorus of night crickets. Their calls rose and fell, delicate and constant, like an invisible thread binding the hours together. A traveler, weary from his path, entered the valley at this late hour. His steps slowed as he listened, allowing the sound of crickets to wrap around him. With each note, the weight of the day's journey lifted, and he felt drawn not to the end of a road, but into the embrace of the night itself. The story begins here not with great events or bustling crowds, but with the quiet music of crickets beneath the stars. Chapter 1: The Lantern by the Village Bridge. At the edge of the village, a wooden bridge stretched across a narrow stream. Its railing was worn smooth by many hands, its planks shining softly where the moonlight touched. A single lantern hung from the post at the far end, its flame sheltered within glass, glowing faintly like a small sun caught between worlds. The traveler paused upon the bridge. Below, the water flowed clear, carrying the reflection of stars and the flicker of fireflies drifting above the reeds. The crickets sang steadily along the banks, their voices overlapping in a rhythm that seemed timeless. He leaned against the railing, letting his gaze fall upon the lantern. Its light swayed gently in the breeze, not strong enough to dispel the darkness, but enough to soften it. Each flicker was a reminder that even in shadow, warmth remained. The traveler breathed deeply, the air cool and tinged with the faint sweetness of rice fields. He closed his eyes, listening the chorus of crickets, the water's murmur, the lantern's flame whispering as it shifted. Here, upon this bridge, he felt the quiet promise of the night that in stillness, there was comfort, and in small lights, endless depth. Chapter 2: The Path Through the Bamboo Grove. The traveler left the bridge and followed a path leading into a grove of bamboo. Tall stalks rose in close rows, their smooth green surfaces glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. As the wind passed through, the bamboo swayed with a deep, gentle rustling, like waves upon a faraway sea. Crickets sang from the undergrowth, their calls echoing between the hollow stalks. The sound was steady, a background chorus that wrapped the grove in living music. The traveler walked slowly, each step soft against the earth, careful not to disturb the rhythm of the night. He stopped at a clearing where the moonlight spilled across the path. The bamboo leaned slightly inward, forming a natural archway that seemed to welcome him deeper. He stood still, listening the layered voices of crickets, the faint creak of bamboo shifting in the wind, the distant murmur of the stream behind him. For a moment, he felt as though the grove itself were breathing. Inhale with the rustle of leaves, exhale with the chorus of insects. Surrounded by sound and shadow, the traveler realized he was no longer an intruder, he was part of the night's gentle rhythm. Chapter 3: The Quiet After the Festival. Beyond the bamboo grove, the traveler reached the heart of the village. The night carried traces of an earlier celebration, the harvest festival. Paper lanterns still hung from poles, swaying faintly in the cool air. Their light had dimmed, yet a few glowed softly, casting golden circles upon the ground. The square was empty now, but the traveler could almost hear the laughter that had filled it hours before. The fragrance of roasted chestnuts lingered faintly in the air, mingling with the scent of smoke from fading hearth fires. Crickets sang along the edges of the square, their steady voices replacing the drums and flutes that had once guided the dancers. The silence was not loneliness, it was rest, the kind that follows joy. The traveler sat upon the edge of a low stone wall. He looked up at the lanterns swaying above him, each one a quiet star tethered to earth. As he listened to the chorus of insects weaving through the stillness, he felt the warmth of community, even in its absence. Here, too, the night revealed its promise that even when voices fade, harmony remains. Chapter 4: The Fields Beyond the Village. The traveler walked beyond the last houses of the village, where wide fields opened under the moonlight. The rice had been harvested, leaving golden stubble that shimmered faintly like threads of silk across the earth. Along the ridges, crickets sang in tireless rhythm, their voices carrying across the open land. Each call rose like a note upon the cool air, overlapping until the whole field seemed alive with sound. The traveler paused to breathe it in the deep hush of night, balanced by the ceaseless chorus. He followed a narrow path between the paddies. The soil was cool beneath his sandals, and the scent of damp earth rose around him. Fireflies drifted here and there, their glow blinking softly in the dark like tiny lanterns left by unseen hands. Looking up, he saw the stars spread wide across the sky. Looking down, he saw them mirrored in the thin threads of water that still lined the fields. Above and below, light and sound mingled, and he walked in the center of it all, between sky and soil, between silence and song. Chapter 5: The Old Wayside Shrine. At the far edge of the fields, the traveler came upon a small shrine. Its wooden beams were weathered and gray, its roof heavy with moss. A rope with paper streamers hung across its entrance, stirring faintly in the night breeze. The traveler bowed lightly before stepping closer. Within, a stone figure rested in shadow, worn smooth by centuries of prayers. Offerings of rice, fruit, and flowers lay quietly before it, left by unseen villagers. The crickets sang even here, their voices surrounding the shrine like a living hymn. The sound seemed to carry reverence, as though the insects themselves were guardians of the sacred space. The traveler lit a single stick of incense from the lantern he carried. Its smoke curled upward, pale against the dark, joining the breath of night. He closed his eyes and listened. The rustle of paper streamers, the song of crickets, the soft crackle of incense. In that moment, the shrine was not small but vast. It was a place where the earth itself seemed to bow in silence, joining the endless chorus of the night. Chapter 6: The Path Beside the River. The traveler followed a narrow path that ran along the edge of a quiet river. The moon lay upon the water like a long ribbon of silver, broken only by the slow ripples of the current. Grass grew high at the banks, bending softly with the movement of the air. The crickets sang from the thickets and reeds, their voices mingling with the low murmur of flowing water. Each sound answered the other, the river speaking in deep tones, the crickets replying in bright, delicate notes. The traveler stopped at a stone that jutted over the river's edge. He sat, gazing at the water as fireflies drifted low, their lights mirrored upon the surface. He leaned forward, dipping his fingers into the current. The river was cool, carrying with it the scents of earth and pine from the mountains upstream. Here, the song of crickets did not dominate, it blended with the river until neither could be separated. The music of night and water was one, and the traveler rested within its harmony. Chapter 7: The Hill Where the Autumn Wind Blows. Beyond the river, the path climbed gently upward, leading to a small hill overlooking the valley. Tall grasses covered its slopes, swaying with the autumn wind that swept softly across the land. The traveler reached the crest and stood still. The breeze brushed his sleeves and carried with it the fragrance of dry grass and distant wood smoke. Beneath him, the village lanterns glowed faintly, scattered like fallen stars across the valley floor. Crickets sang among the grasses, their voices trembling with the movement of the wind. Together, sound and motion formed a rhythm that seemed endless, one breath of the earth drawn in and released again. The traveler sat upon a flat stone, closing his eyes. The wind combed gently through the grass, brushing his skin with its cool touch. The chorus of insects rose and fell, carried away, then returned. On that hill, he felt as if the world itself were breathing with him. The wind was the inhale, the cricket song the exhale. And he, sitting between them, belonged wholly to both. Chapter 8: The Cedar Path in Darkness. Leaving the grassy hill behind, the traveler descended into a path lined with towering cedars. Their trunks rose tall and straight, their bark darkened by the weight of time. The canopy above was so thick that only fragments of moonlight reached the ground, falling like scattered silver coins. The air within the cedar grove was cooler, touched with the fragrance of resin and damp earth. Each step of the traveler's sandals upon the ground echoed faintly, softened by fallen needles. The crickets sang here as well, though their voices were gentler, subdued beneath the towering trees. Their calls seemed distant, yet constant, like hidden guardians keeping watch over the path. Occasionally, an owl called from high above, its voice deep and solemn, blending with the insect chorus to create a harmony of earth and sky. The traveler paused midway, placing a hand upon one of the ancient trunks. Its surface was rough, steady, and grounding. Surrounded by darkness and song, he felt as though the cedars themselves breathed with him, silent, enduring, timeless. Chapter 9: The Village Before Dawn. When the traveler emerged from the cedar path, the valley lay before him once again. The village below still slept, its rooftops silvered by moonlight. Only the faintest glow hinted at the coming of dawn, painting the eastern horizon with a soft line of pale blue. The crickets sang more quietly now, their voices thinning as the night deepened. Yet their chorus remained, a steady thread binding the hours together until the first bird would call the day. The traveler entered the village streets, where doors were shut and windows dark. Smoke no longer rose from the chimneys, and the wells stood still, waiting for morning hands. The silence here was complete, yet not empty. It was full of promise, as if the entire village breathed in unison with the earth. He paused at the square, sitting upon the same low wall where festival lanterns had once glowed. Now, only stars hung above, reflected faintly in the basin of water near the shrine. As he listened to the fading song of the crickets, the traveler realized that the night, too, was preparing to rest. Soon, the insects would be quiet, and the voices of morning would rise in their place. Chapter 10: The River in Morning Mist. The traveler returned to the river bank, where the first faint mist of dawn began to gather. The water no longer shone with silver but instead reflected a pale, milky glow. The surface was smooth, disturbed only by the occasional leap of a fish or the slow drift of a fallen leaf. The crickets still sang from the grasses, but their rhythm had softened, as though they too were growing weary. Their voices blended with the whisper of the mist rolling across the water, creating a delicate veil of sound. The traveler stood at the edge, gazing across the wide river. He watched as the mist thickened, blurring the far shore into dreamlike shapes. A bridge emerged from the haze, its wooden planks darkened with dew. The traveler stepped upon it slowly, each footfall carrying him deeper into the quiet morning. Halfway across, he paused. The cricket's song reached him still, faint yet steady, their voices following him into the mist. For a moment, he felt as though the insects themselves were guiding him safely across, their chorus a thread between the night behind and the day ahead. Chapter 11: The Sound of the Temple Bell. On the far side of the river, the traveler saw the outline of a temple rising through the mist. Its tiled roof gleamed faintly in the dim light, and its wooden gates stood wide in welcome. He entered the grounds with quiet steps. The air smelled of moss and damp stone, mixed with the faint fragrance of incense that lingered even at this early hour. In the distance, the crickets still called, though their song now seemed fragile, like the last whispers of a dream. Then, a sound arose, the low, deep strike of the temple bell. It rolled across the valley with a weight that seemed to shake both earth and sky. The note lingered, resonating within the traveler's chest, blending with the fading chorus of the insects. Each toll followed slowly after the last, allowing silence to stretch wide in between. Within that silence, the traveler heard the echo of crickets, their song weaving gently around the bell's deep voice. The two sounds, one eternal and one fleeting, met in harmony. The traveler closed his eyes and breathed. The night had not ended, nor had the day begun fully. He stood at the threshold between them, cradled by the resonance of bell and insect alike. Chapter 12 The Garden of Morning Dew. After leaving the temple grounds, the traveler entered a small garden tucked between low wooden walls. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the fragrance of moss and early blossoms. Every blade of grass and every leaf shimmered with tiny drops of dew, each one catching the faint morning light. They sparkled like scattered pearls, yet melted away at the gentlest touch. The traveler crouched to observe a single droplet balanced upon a petal. It quivered, reflecting the world upside down before sliding quietly to the soil. The crickets still sang among the shrubs, though their voices were softer now, as if weighed down by the damp air. Their rhythm echoed faintly in the stillness, a reminder that the night had not fully left. The traveler sat upon a low stone bench, listening. The sound of the insects intertwined with the occasional rustle of sparrows in the eaves. A meeting of two worlds, night and morning, crickets and birds. In that delicate balance, the garden seemed alive, breathing in dew and exhaling light. Chapter 13 The Quiet of the Mountain Path. From the garden, a narrow trail wound upward into the hills. The traveler followed, climbing slowly as the mist clung to his sleeves and hair. The path was lined with tall grasses, damp with dew, and stones worn smooth by countless steps before his own. Here, the cricket's song grew faint, replaced by the hush of the mountain itself. Only a few voices rose from the undergrowth, thin and high, fragile notes carried on the breeze. The traveler realized how far he had come from the chorus of the fields, yet even a handful of calls was enough to remind him of the living night. Birdsong had not yet taken full hold, and so the silence of the mountain was deep, almost timeless. The traveler paused at a bend where the trees parted, revealing the valley below. Lanterns in the village had gone out, smoke began to rise from chimneys, and the first light brushed the roofs. He stood still, breathing in the quiet. The faint cricket calls drifted upward from the grasses at his feet, their song so delicate it seemed to come from the earth itself. In that stillness, the traveler felt both the distance he had traveled and the closeness of everything around him. Chapter 14 The Tea House by the Mountain Pass. As the traveler climbed higher, the mist began to thin, and a soft warmth touched the air. At the crest of the pass, he found a small tea house, its roof thatched with straw and its walls darkened by many seasons. The door was closed, yet the veranda welcomed any wanderer to rest. The traveler sat upon the worn wooden boards, gazing out across the valley below. From this height, the world seemed wrapped in a veil of blue and silver, the first rays of morning still waiting beyond the mountains. The crickets sang faintly in the grass surrounding the tea house. Their voices were few now, yet the rhythm was steady, like the last embers of a fire refusing to fade. The traveler cupped his hands around a flask of tea he carried, sipping slowly. The warmth spread through him, balancing the cool air of dawn. Above, a hawk drifted soundlessly, its wings catching the new light. Below, the insects continued their song. The traveler smiled at the contrast, the vast silence of the sky, and the fragile persistence of the earth's small voices. Chapter 15 The Vanishing Song in Sunlight. When the traveler resumed his steps, the sky had grown brighter. Golden light spilled over the ridge, touching the grasses and the stones. The mist withdrew into the valleys, and with it, the chorus of the night. The crickets sang a little longer, their rhythm unbroken even as the warmth grew. Yet one by one, their voices softened, as though each note were a farewell. Soon the song was scattered, distant, and finally lost to the rising chorus of morning birds. The traveler stopped at a high clearing, where the full light of the sun poured over him. He looked back once, listening. Only silence answered, except for the rustle of sparrows and the soft sigh of the wind. And yet, within that silence, he still carried the memory of the night's chorus. It echoed in his heart, not as sound but as stillness, the gift of the insects who had sung the darkness into peace. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and continued forward, carrying the quiet call of the crickets into the brightness of day. Chapter 16 The Path Through the Forest. The traveler descended from the mountain pass and entered a forest where tall trees arched above, their branches forming a canopy now touched by the first light of morning. Sunbeams slipped through in narrow shafts, painting golden circles upon the path. The forest was alive with quiet awakening. Birds stretched their wings and called softly from hidden perches. The wind moved gently among the leaves, carrying the scent of pine and fresh soil. The crickets here were few, their calls distant and hesitant. They seemed like the echoes of the night, lingering in the shaded places where sunlight had not yet touched. The traveler paused to listen, cherishing each note as though it were a rare treasure. He touched the trunk of a tree, its bark warm with the arrival of day. The sound of the insects, faint though it was, blended with the rustle of the canopy above. In that mingling, he felt the bridge between worlds, the night that had ended, and the morning that had begun. Chapter 17 The Village in Sunlight. At last, the traveler stepped out of the forest and saw the village spread before him. The rooftops gleamed in the full embrace of the sun, and smoke rose steadily from chimneys as fires were kindled for breakfast. Children's voices carried faintly through the streets, calling to one another as they ran. The crickets were gone now, their song surrendered fully to the day. Yet the traveler felt their presence still, in the silence that followed, in the spaces between the calls of sparrows and the laughter of villagers. Their music had become part of the morning, though it could no longer be heard. He walked slowly along the familiar lanes. Doors were open, water was drawn from wells, and the scent of rice cooking drifted warmly in the air. Smiles greeted him as he passed, and the sound of daily life rose like a gentle tide. The traveler paused at the edge of a small pond, gazing at the reflection of the sky. The crickets' voices no longer filled the air, but in his memory, they lingered, an unseen song stitched into the very fabric of the world. Chapter 18 Rest beneath the open sky. The traveler left the village behind, walking a short distance until the houses faded into fields once more. He came upon a small rise where grasses swayed in the sunlight, and there he chose to rest. The air was bright now, filled with the chatter of sparrows and the hum of bees. Yet when the traveler closed his eyes, he still heard the faint call of the night crickets, carried within him like a hidden melody. He lay upon the soft earth, watching clouds drift slowly across the morning sky. Each breath seemed to carry away the weight of the journey, leaving only quiet contentment. His heart was steady, his thoughts clear. The night had passed, yet its gentle music lingered, shaping the silence of the day. The traveler drifted into sleep beneath the warmth of the sun, his dreams filled not with noise but with stillness, an endless field of voices rising and falling like the rhythm of the earth. Epilogue: the song that remains. Time passed, and the day grew bright. Villagers went about their work, unaware that only hours before, the night had been alive with the song of countless crickets. Yet for the traveler, and for those who paused to listen closely, that music would never truly fade. It remained in the hush between sounds, in the spaces where silence seemed deepest. It was present in the rustle of leaves, the murmur of water, the distant echo of a bell. The cricket's song was not meant to last, and yet, by ending, it revealed something greater, that quiet itself is a gift, that stillness holds its own kind of music. And so, as the sun climbed higher and the day unfolded, the traveler carried with him a truth born of the night that even in the brightness of morning, the quiet call of crickets endures, not in the ears, but in the heart. Twilight shadows on the stone path. Prologue. Twilight shadows on the stone path. The evening light draped itself gently over the old temple, as if it were made of silk and memory. Along the narrow stone path that wound between moss-covered walls, the last breath of sunlight lingered, glinting faintly on the edges of the paving stones polished smooth by centuries of footsteps. A bell from somewhere deep within the temple grounds rang once low, resonant, and almost hesitant. It was not a call, not even a reminder, but rather a sigh of time itself. The air held that peculiar stillness Kyoto wears when day begins to surrender to night incense from a nearby altar, the faint scent of camellia, the sound of a bamboo ladle tapping against a basin. Beneath the gate's curved roof stood a monk named Ryosen, his robe brushed by the soft wind coming down from the eastern hills. He had lived here for many years, tending to the temple garden, teaching meditation to a few visitors, and listening to the rustle of seasons as though each sound carried a small teaching of its own. As twilight deepened, Ryosen felt the same quiet awareness that had guided him for most of his life, the sense that peace was not something to be sought, but simply remembered. He walked slowly along the stone path, his sandals making a sound like distant rain. The path led toward the garden where a single lantern waited, unlit, its paper shade trembling faintly in the wind. He paused, looking up at the sky. Above the temple roofs, the first stars began to appear, small, trembling points in a sea of fading gold. The crows had flown back to the forest, even the city's hum seemed softened by distance. He could almost hear the earth itself breathing. There was a memory that often visited him at this hour. A memory of another evening, long ago, when he was still a novice walking behind his teacher on this very path. He remembered how the teacher had said, "Listen carefully, Ryosen. In the space between two steps, between two breaths, you may find the gate that does not open or close." For many years, he had pondered those words, not with his mind but with his days, sweeping leaves, arranging stones, waiting for silence to become a friend. Now, as the shadows lengthened like strands of ink across the stones, Ryosen felt the faint echo of those words return. He knelt beside the path, touched the moss with his fingertips, and smiled. The texture was cool, alive, infinitely patient. Somewhere, a wind chime sang from the eaves, a fragile note carried into the dusk. When he finally rose, the last light of the sun was gone, leaving the temple wrapped in a delicate blue. He lit the small lantern, its glow spreading softly across the garden gate, and whispered, almost to himself, "Evening has arrived. Let us rest with it." And so the night began, quiet, slow, like a long inhalation of peace. Chapter 1: The Whispering Garden. Morning in Kyoto arrives not with brightness, but with texture, the soft clatter of a bicycle on distant stones. The murmur of wind through cedars, the scent of rain lingering from a dream. When Ryosen slid open his shoji, the garden greeted him in its usual silence, a silence that was full rather than empty. Mist hovered low, gathering in the hollows between rocks. Drops of water clung to the bamboo leaves, trembling as though reluctant to fall. The pond at the center of the garden mirrored nothing but the pale sky, like a mind emptied of thought. Somewhere beyond the wall, a train whispered past, reminding him that the city was waking. He brewed his morning tea the same way he always did, measured, slow, aware. The water poured from the kettle in a thin silver line, the steam rose like the first sigh of consciousness. When he lifted the cup to his lips, the warmth seemed to move through him with quiet gratitude. Every morning, he felt the same small wonder: the world is still here. I am still breathing. After tea, Ryosen took his broom and walked into the garden. He began sweeping the path, though there were hardly any leaves to move. The act was not about cleaning, it was about listening. The bristles brushed lightly against the stones, marking time like a heartbeat. The scent of damp earth rose with each stroke. As he worked, a sound came from beyond the gate, a hesitant knock, followed by silence. Visitors rarely came this early. He set the broom aside and opened the gate. A young woman stood there, holding a camera. She bowed quickly, almost apologetically. "I'm sorry to disturb you," she said in a gentle voice. "I didn't realize the temple was open." Ryosen smiled. "It is not open, and yet you have arrived. Please, come in." She stepped through the gate, her eyes wide at the sight of the moss and the still pond. "I'm a photographer," she explained. "I'm working on a project about quiet places in Kyoto. Someone told me about this temple, but I wasn't sure it still existed." "It exists," he said, though only as much as silence allows. The woman laughed softly, not quite understanding but comforted by his tone. She began to take photographs of the stone basin, the lantern, the dew on the leaves. Each time her shutter clicked, the sound seemed to disappear into the air without echo. Ryosen watched her with a kind of affectionate detachment. He had seen many visitors over the years, pilgrims, travelers, seekers of peace, and each brought their own weather. Some came with questions, some with grief, some simply with curiosity. Most left changed in ways they could not name. After a while, she lowered her camera. "Do you live here alone?" He nodded. "Alone, but never lonely. The garden keeps me company." She smiled. "It must be peaceful." "It is," he said. "But peace is not the absence of sound. It is the space that allows sound to be." For a moment, she seemed to ponder that, her gaze following a koi gliding beneath the pond's surface. Then she asked, "Do you ever get tired of silence?" Ryosen looked toward the hills beyond the wall, where mist drifted like unspoken thought. "Silence is like breathing," he said. "You cannot tire of it unless you hold it too tightly." They stood there together, not speaking. The sound of a bell from a nearby temple drifted through the air, marking the hour. The tone merged with the wind and faded. When she finally left, she bowed deeply. "Thank you, Sensei. I think I understand a little more now." He watched her walk down the path until she disappeared beyond the gate. Then he returned to his sweeping. As the day unfolded, sunlight began to filter through the trees, catching the fine mist and turning it into a veil of gold. Ryosen paused to look at it. The world, he thought, was endlessly generous. It gave itself to each moment without demand or expectation. To witness that giving was enough. Later, he would write a small verse in his journal. "The broom moves slowly, shadows fall across the stones. The wind says nothing." That evening, as twilight returned to the temple, he placed a new candle inside the garden lantern and watched its flame quiver in the soft air. He thought of the photographer, wandering the city with her camera, perhaps already forgetting the sound of the broom or the scent of moss. But that was as it should be. Every encounter, like a falling leaf, had its own quiet season. The flame flickered, then steadied. The first stars appeared again above the temple roof, as they always did, unhurried, certain. Ryosen folded his hands and whispered a short prayer, not for anyone in particular, but for the evening itself. And when he closed his eyes, it seemed that even the stones beneath his feet were breathing with him. Chapter 2: The Bell of Evening. The day had passed with the gentleness of drifting clouds. By late afternoon, the garden had fallen into that tranquil stillness that always preceded dusk, a pause before the temple bell announced the evening. The sun leaned low, casting long, slanted rays through the bamboo grove behind the main hall. Each shaft of light carried floating motes of dust, turning the air into a slow-moving golden mist. Ryosen sat on the veranda, gazing at the garden where shadows lengthened like ink spreading on parchment. He listened to the faint hum of cicadas, the soft tapping of a branch against the temple wall. These sounds were not interruptions, they were the texture of silence itself. In the distance, he heard a child's laughter echoing up from the street beyond the gate. The sound reminded him that the world was still alive and changing beyond these walls. He smiled to himself. The temple had always been both inside and outside the world, one foot in the city, one in eternity. The evening bell stood within a small pavilion near the back of the temple grounds. It was cast in bronze centuries ago, its surface etched with faint lotus patterns worn smooth by time. Each evening, Ryosen struck it once, never more. The sound lingered in the valley long after the motion had ceased, folding into the twilight like incense smoke curling into the rafters. As he approached the bell that evening, a figure was already standing there, a man in his 50s, wearing a worn suit and holding his hat in both hands. He looked awkward, uncertain, like someone who had wandered in by mistake. "Good evening," Ryosen said softly. The man bowed deeply. "Forgive me, sensei. I used to live near here, many years ago. I heard the bell from the street and thought perhaps I could hear it once more, up close." "You're welcome to," Ryosen said. "The bell belongs to no one." The man looked at the bell as if it were a doorway to another life. "When I was a boy," he said, "my mother would bring me here every evening. We would listen from outside the gate. She said the bell carried prayers to those we could not see." Ryosen nodded. Perhaps she was right. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Ryosen lifted the mallet and struck the bell. A deep, resonant tone spread outward, rolling through the air like a tide. It vibrated in the man's chest, in the trees, in the very stones beneath their feet. The world seemed to stop breathing. When the sound faded, the man wiped his eyes. "My mother passed away last winter," he said. "I think she would have liked to hear that again." Ryosen placed a hand gently on the man's shoulder. "Then she has," he said. "The sound travels farther than we can follow." The man bowed again, silently. As he left, the bell still trembled faintly in the cool air, like the aftertaste of memory. Ryosen stood there until the first fireflies appeared along the garden's edge. He realized that every sound, every bell, every whisper was not merely heard, it was received, remembered by the world itself. He thought of the woman with the camera, the echo of her footsteps, the laughter of the child, all threads in the same vast fabric of listening. That night, he wrote another verse. The bell fades away still, the air continues to ring. Silence remembers. He placed his brush down, closed the inkstone lid, and let the evening surround him. Outside, the city lights shimmered faintly through the temple trees, like distant constellations, reminding him that even quiet places were held within the pulse of life. Chapter 3: The River Beneath the Maple Trees. A few days later, the weather changed. The air grew warm, and the scent of approaching rain hung over the city. In the garden, maple leaves had begun to turn from green to amber, each leaf carrying the promise of impermanence. The shift of seasons came not with thunder, but with softness like a sigh between two thoughts. That morning, Ryosen decided to walk down to the river. He took the narrow path that wound from the temple gate toward the Kamo River, his sandals brushing against fallen petals and gravel. The world was awake yet unhurried. Shopkeepers were opening shutters, students crossing bridges with umbrellas tucked under their arms, an old man feeding pigeons by a shrine gate. At the river bank, Ryosen stopped beneath a maple tree. The water glimmered faintly, carrying reflections of sky and leaves. A light drizzle began to fall, and he watched as the raindrops made concentric circles that merged and vanished, each one erasing itself into stillness. He sat on a bench near the water and listened. The city's distant murmur blended with the gentle sound of rain on the river's surface. It was not silence, yet it held silence within it, the kind that deepens, not disappears. A voice interrupted his reverie. "Sensei, may I sit here?" It was the photographer again, the young woman he had met in the garden. She held a small paper bag in one hand and a camera slung around her neck. "Of course," he said. "The river welcomes everyone." She smiled and sat beside him. "I didn't expect to see you here. I was taking pictures of the bridge, and then I saw you under this tree. You looked like part of the scene." "Perhaps I am," he said. "After all, the scene does not end at the eye." She laughed. "You always say things that sound like poetry." He tilted his head slightly. "Perhaps the world speaks in poetry all the time. We only forget how to listen." She opened the paper bag and offered him a small sweet bun. "I brought too many. Please." He accepted it with gratitude. They ate in companionable silence, watching the rain. The river flowed slowly, its surface marked by ripples that never stayed the same. A heron stood motionless on the far bank, like a white stroke in a painting. After a while, she said quietly, "My grandmother used to bring me to this river when I was little." She said the sound of water carried old stories. "I didn't understand then, but lately I think I do." Ryosen nodded. "Water teaches us that everything moves, yet nothing is lost. The rain began to ease, and sunlight filtered through the clouds, making the wet stones gleam. The maple leaves shimmered, each drop of rain turning to a spark of light. The photographer lifted her camera and took one picture, just one. Then she lowered it and said, "I don't think I need more than that." "Perhaps one is enough," Ryosen said. "When the heart is quiet, a single moment contains all others." They sat until the sun broke fully through the clouds. The sound of the river deepened, rich and steady. When she rose to leave, she bowed and said, "Sensei, thank you for being here." He smiled. "I was not waiting, but I am glad you arrived." When she was gone, Ryosen remained by the water, listening. The river spoke without words, stories of passing clouds, forgotten prayers, unending return. He thought again of the bell's fading sound, of silence that remembers, and he understood everything that touches the world leaves a note behind. He looked up. A single maple leaf drifted down, spinning slowly, then resting upon the river's surface. It floated away, carried toward the unseen sea. And in that moment, Ryosen felt what his teacher once meant: long a gothe gate that does not open or close. Chapter 4: The Moonlit Temple. The moon rose quietly over Kyoto, pale and round as a prayer bead held in the palm of night. It floated above the tiled roofs and maple crowns, washing the old temple in silver light. Every corner of the garden, the pond, the stepping stones, the bamboo fence gleamed faintly, as if the moon had whispered a blessing over them. Ryosen sat beneath the veranda, the cool air brushing against his face. He had finished the evening tea and was watching the shadows shift. At this hour, the city seemed far away. The traffic, the voices, the neon all dissolved into the hush that wrapped the temple like a robe. The lantern by the gate flickered in the wind. A moth circled it, tracing invisible patterns through the night. Somewhere beyond the wall, a night heron called once, then fell silent again. In that silence, Ryosen's mind began to drift. He remembered the years when he had first come to the temple as a novice, young, restless, full of questions that had no answers. His teacher, old and serene, had told him, "Do not chase the moon in the pond. Sit by the water, and let it come to you." At the time, he had not understood. But now, decades later, as the real moon rested upon the still pond before him, he smiled at the memory. The reflection trembled with each breath of wind, yet never disappeared. It was both there and not there, like peace itself. From within the main hall came the faint scent of sandalwood, lingering from the evening offering. The smell carried memories, faces, voices, small kindnesses left behind like footprints in dew. He thought of his teacher again, of the day the old monk had passed away, sitting upright before the altar. No final words, no farewell. Only a smile, and the soft sound of wind moving through the paper doors. Ryosen rose slowly and walked into the main hall. The tatami beneath his feet was cool, the wood pillars smooth with age. He lit a single candle and placed it before the small statue of the Bodhisattva. The flame wavered, then steadied, casting ripples of light across the golden face. He whispered a short sutra, his voice low, almost inaudible. The words were not a request but a remembrance, a thread tying this night to all nights before it. When he finished, he stepped outside again. The moon was higher now, bright enough to show the patterns of the garden raked earlier that morning. Each line of sand curved like flowing water, leading the eye toward the lantern, the stones, and finally the pond. He sat once more, his breath slow, his thoughts as transparent as the night air. Somewhere deep in the mountains, a temple bell rang soft, delayed, distant. The sound arrived like a dream that has taken the long way home. As the bell's final note faded, Ryosen whispered, "Moonlight does not seek the temple. The temple rests within its glow." He closed his eyes, and for a moment, the world ceased to divide itself into light and shadow. There was only stillness, infinite and kind. When he opened them again, the moth had vanished. The lantern had gone out, leaving the moon to shine unchallenged. He smiled faintly. It was enough. Chapter 5: The Memory of Incense. Morning came softly, with the pale light of dawn seeping through the paper doors like a slow tide. Ryosen awoke before the city stirred, listening to the faint rustle of wind through cedar leaves. The air was cool, touched with the scent of yesterday's incense, a trace of smoke that clung to the rafters like a ghost of devotion. He sat up, wrapped his robe, and bowed toward the small altar in his room. Then, as he did each day, he lit a fresh stick of incense. The flame caught, flared briefly, then sank into a slow red glow. Thin streams of smoke spiraled upward, twisting and dissolving into the quiet. He watched them rise, thinking of how fragrance and memory were bound by the same impermanence. Each breath carried something unseen, each moment burned down to ash. And yet, how full it all was, each fleeting scent a small universe unto itself. After morning meditation, he walked to the main hall. There, on the steps, he found a small package wrapped in plain paper. Someone had left it during the night. He picked it up and read the attached note, written in careful handwriting. For Sensei Ryosen. Thank you for your kindness by the river. Mika. He smiled, so that was the photographer's name. Inside the package, he found a small wooden box containing handmade incense sticks. The scent was faint even before burning, but deeply familiar, floral, clean, with a whisper of plum blossom. It reminded him of something he could not quite place. He lit one immediately, letting the aroma spread through the hall. The fragrance seemed to open hidden doors within his mind. He remembered his mother's hands folding a futon at dawn, the temple corridors of his youth, the teacher's laughter echoing through an empty hall. Memories that had long faded now stirred, like dust rising in sunlight. Later, while sweeping the garden, he noticed how the scent drifted outward through the open doors, mingling with the air and light. Even the small sparrows on the fence seemed to pause, as if listening. He thought of Mika wandering Kyoto with her camera. Perhaps somewhere beneath the same morning sky, unaware that her gift had become part of the temple's breath. He murmured, "Every kindness is a fragrance that lingers unseen." In the afternoon, a group of visitors arrived, 3 elderly women on a temple walk. They admired the garden, asked about the stones, and spoke in voices that carried laughter like windbills. One of them said, "It smells wonderful here, Sensei. What incense do you use?" He smiled. "A gift," he said simply. "From the river." That evening, as twilight deepened, he placed the last stick of incense from the box before the altar. He watched the smoke rise and twist, its movement delicate, unhurried. He thought again of the bell, the river, the moon, the 3 teachers that never spoke yet taught everything. When the incense finally burned down, he whispered, "The fragrance fades, but its path remains in the heart that breathes it." Outside, the first stars appeared. The wind carried the faint scent through the garden and beyond the wall, into the sleeping city. Perhaps, somewhere far away, someone would pause without knowing why, and feel a quiet calm wash over them. Ryosen closed his eyes, listening to the night settling around him. The world was full of gentle echoes, each one a reminder that nothing truly leaves. The temple breathed. The incense curled upward one last time. And in that delicate trace of smoke, peace took form again, wordless, endless, kind. Chapter 6: The Silent Guest. The first snow of winter arrived without warning. It fell like dust from the unseen edges of heaven, gathering quietly on the temple roof, on the stone lanterns, on the moss that now slept beneath a white veil. The garden, once alive with autumn's color, had become a world of silence and light. Ryosen stood by the veranda, watching the flakes drift through the air. Each one seemed to move with its own rhythm, falling neither too fast nor too slow. When they landed, the world itself seemed to exhale. He had always loved snow. Its stillness was not emptiness, but fullness, a silence so complete that even thought bowed before it. He took a slow breath, feeling the cool air touch his throat. The scent of pine mingled faintly with the distant smoke from nearby houses. As he turned to go inside, he noticed footprints in the snow leading to the main gate. They were light and delicate, the steps of someone unsure whether they were allowed to enter. He followed them with curiosity. There, just beyond the gate, stood an elderly woman. Her coat was dusted with snow. Her hands held a small bundle wrapped in cloth. When she saw him, she bowed deeply. "Forgive my intrusion, Sensei," she said softly. "I didn't know where else to go." "You are welcome here," Ryosen replied, stepping aside. "Please, come in." She hesitated. "I am not a believer. I have not prayed in many years." He smiled. "The temple does not ask for belief, only presence." Slowly, she crossed the threshold. Her eyes wandered over the garden, the snow, the pond, the old stones, each carrying a quiet gravity. "This place," she whispered, "it feels like my husband's voice." He used to speak like this, slowly, carefully, as though afraid to disturb the air. Ryosen nodded. The garden remembers such voices. She looked down at the bundle in her hands. Inside was a small wooden box. "My husband's ashes," she said. "He loved this city. I thought perhaps he could rest near the temple." "Of course," Ryosen said. "The earth here accepts all who arrive." Together, they walked to the maple tree beside the pond. The snow had covered its roots, softening every line of the world. Ryosen handed her a small wooden ladle. "Would you like to scatter them here?" She nodded, tears glistening in the corners of her eyes. When she opened the box, the wind rose gently, carrying the ashes into the air. They mingled with the falling snow, becoming part of it, indistinguishable from the sky's own offering. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the faint rustle of snow filled the silence. Finally, the woman said, "He always told me silence was the only truth. I never understood until now." Ryosen bowed. "Then he has taught you again, even from the stillness." She smiled, bowed once more, and left the temple, her footprints vanishing as new snow covered them. When she was gone, Ryosen stood beneath the maple tree, the ashes of another life drifting unseen around him. He felt no sorrow, only gratitude for presence, for endings that were also beginnings. He whispered into the cold air, "The guest departs, yet the seat remains warm." Silence is the host. Chapter 7 The Garden of First Light. The days grew longer again, almost imperceptibly at first. A thin warmth returned to the air, and the snow began to melt along the temple's southern wall. Drops of water slid down the moss and gathered in tiny pools that mirrored the pale sky. Ryosen woke early, before the light fully broke. He stepped outside, his breath visible in the crisp air. The world was hushed, waiting for something unseen to arrive. As he walked toward the garden, he noticed small green shoots piercing through the melting snow. Winter was retreating without farewell, and spring was whispering its first promise. The sound of a stream returning beneath the ice filled the stillness, a quiet, flowing laughter from the heart of the earth. He took his broom, brushing away the last traces of frost from the stone path. The motion was slow, deliberate, tender, as if greeting an old friend after a long absence. Each sweep revealed the color of the stones again, their gray surfaces darkened by moisture, glistening faintly in the dawn. Then, from the distance, came the familiar chime of the city's first train. That soft metallic rhythm carried through the morning air, merging with the temple's own silence. Ryosen smiled. Even the world beyond the walls had its way of praying. By mid-morning, Mika returned. She entered the gate with quiet steps, carrying her camera as always, though it now hung unused by her side. She bowed deeply. "Good morning, Sensei." "It has been some time," Ryosen said warmly. "The garden missed your footsteps." She smiled. "I wanted to bring you something." From her bag, she drew out a small framed photograph. It was the picture she had taken by the river months ago. Ryosen sitting beneath the maple tree as rain fell, the water behind him silver and soft. The composition was simple, but it seemed to breathe. "I thought you might want it," she said. "It feels peaceful." Ryosen looked at the photograph for a long time. He saw not himself, but the stillness that had surrounded him, the same stillness that was here now, unchanging. He placed the frame beside the altar and said, "It is not a picture of me. It is a picture of the pause between two breaths." Mika nodded. "Then I'm glad I caught it." They sat together for a while, sharing tea as the morning sunlight filled the room. No words were needed. Outside, the garden seemed to pulse with quiet joy, the sound of dripping water, the hum of a distant bell, the faint scent of new blossoms. When Mika finally rose to leave, she hesitated at the gate. "Sensei," she said softly, "I think I'll stop taking pictures for a while. I want to just see." Ryosen smiled. "Then you are already seeing." As she walked away, he watched her until she vanished around the corner. He felt a lightness in his chest, like the air before spring rain. The garden shimmered in the sunlight, and he thought, everything returns, but never the same. He wrote one final verse in his journal. Morning dew on moss, each drop a world reborn. Nothing lost tonight. Epilogue dawn beyond the gate. The temple was quiet again, wrapped in the color of dawn. The horizon glowed faintly, a soft peach hue spilling across the tiled roofs of Kyoto. Mist drifted between the trees, dissolving as the first sunlight touched it. Ryosen stood before the main gate, looking down the stone path that had seen so many mornings before this one. It was the same path from the beginning, the same moss, the same stones, but it felt new, as though each footstep had rewritten its meaning. He remembered his teacher's words, long ago between two breaths, the gate that does not open or close. Now he understood. It was not a riddle. It was a way of living, of standing where life and silence meet, without needing to choose between them. He bowed toward the garden, toward the hills beyond the city, toward the rising sun. The light spilled over the path, catching the faint traces of dew, making each stone glisten as if awake. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang, the first of the new day. Its sound stretched across the valley, warm and full, touching rooftops, rivers, hearts. Ryosen closed his eyes and whispered, not as prayer but as gratitude. May all who walk this path find the stillness between steps. And then, with the calm certainty of dawn itself, he turned and began to sweep the path anew. The wind stirred gently through the bamboo. The world inhaled, and from the quiet heart of Kyoto, the day began again.